They called it a joke, a floating coffin. Some even called it Earth's embarrassment. When the Terran Alliance unveiled TSV Daggerfall, the galaxy laughed. No fancy graviton shields, no phased plasma railguns, no sleek, serpent-like design like the Alari dreadnoughts or Vorn stealth carriers. Just a thick, ugly beast of steel bolted together like someone built it in a scrapyard. Even Earth's own command didn't take it seriously, but Commander Jace Rennick did. Jace wasn't like other fleet officers. He didn't rise through the ranks with politics or connections. He was a soldier, born and forged in fire. Former ground marine, survivor of the siege of Andros Thive. They said he was too blunt, too reckless, too attached to the past. But Jace had seen what modern war had done to Earth, how sleek ships and smart tech had failed when brute force was needed. He believed in grit. He believed in legacy. And he believed in the Daggerfall, even when no one else did. The ship itself was a relic. Made from the old titanium carbon frame of a pre-Federation battleship, it had been retrofitted a dozen times over. Nothing about it screamed advanced, except for one thing, its power core. The Daggerfall ran on a modified energy drive salvaged from an alien vessel that crash-landed during the Silent War. Engineers had tried to reverse engineer it for years and failed. It wasn't compatible with most systems. It glitched, pulsed, and once nearly tore a lab apart. But Jace pushed to install it anyway, and they let him, mostly because no one else wanted the ship. When the Vorn Imperium invaded, they didn't even bother scanning for the Daggerfall. It was posted near the outer belt of Sector 9, guarding a mining station nobody cared about. Earth's fleet collapsed in a matter of days. Entire battalions erased, the Terran capital under threat. The call went out for all viable ships to fall back to Vega Prime to make a final stand. Daggerfall wasn't called. It was an afterthought. But Jace Rennick didn't need orders. He stood before his crew, all 143 of them, half of them barely out of training, and told them the truth. Earth was dying. The Vorn weren't just invading, they were exterminating. And if they didn't do something, Vega Prime would fall, and with it, the last hope of humanity's survival. Most captains would have told their crew to flee. Jace didn't. He asked for volunteers. All of them stayed. They ran the old core hot, stripped down the non-essential systems, boosted the remaining guns with unstable plasma infusers. The ship groaned and sparked the entire time, but it held. Daggerfall had been called many things, but never a coward. And neither was its captain. When they arrived at Vega Prime, the battlefield was already burning. Earth's finest ships were getting slaughtered. The Vorn fleet moved like ghosts, silent, fast, merciless. Daggerfall dropped out of warp into the middle of it all. The enemy ignored her. Their scanners barely registered the ship's presence. Outdated, unarmed, non-threat. Those were the tags in the Vorn targeting data. Jace grinned when he heard that. He walked onto the bridge, strapped into the captain's chair, and looked at his tactical officer. Initiate Ember Protocol. No one said a word. No one had to. Ember Protocol wasn't officially logged. It wasn't sanctioned. It was something Jace and a blacklisted Earth engineer named Oswin Hale had cooked up in secret. Something born from dozens of failed tests and sleepless nights. It involved pushing the alien energy core to its absolute limit. Past safety, past logic, past everything. The core lit up. Daggerfall's ugly steel exterior began to glow, red veins pulsing like blood under skin. For a moment, it looked alive. Then came the silence, and then annihilation. It was like a god had exhaled. A shockwave burst out, invisible, clean, and surgical. It bypassed shields, crashed guidance systems, fried weapon arrays, Vorn ships began to implode, one after the other, silent explosions in the vacuum of space, like stars blinking out. 30 enemy vessels were reduced to nothing in under 90 seconds. The humans on the ground saw it first. They looked up, expecting death, and saw salvation. The fleet couldn't believe it. Jace stood there on the bridge, lit by emergency lights, chest rising and falling, calm as the grave. They should have taken us seriously. From that moment on, they did, and humanity had just announced, with blood and fire, that it wasn't going anywhere. The silence that followed the annihilation of the Vorn fleet was unreal. Space, usually a sea of overlapping comm chatter, battlefield screams, and alerts, had gone quiet. It wasn't just the enemy who went silent. Earth's forces, still licking their wounds and trying to regroup, froze too. They couldn't process what they'd just witnessed. The TSV Daggerfall, that rust-covered hulk nobody took seriously, was now hovering among the shredded remains of a fleet that had humiliated Earth's best. Burnt Vorn hulls drifted like twisted metal corpses across the blackness. Their elegant warships were turned into junk in under 2 minutes, and all of it had come from that forgotten ship with a power core no one understood. Inside the bridge of the Daggerfall, Commander Jace Rennick stood from his chair slowly. His knuckles were white from gripping the armrests during the blast, and the emergency lights bathed the bridge in red pulses. It wasn't dramatic flair. It was necessity. The ship had suffered minor damage from its own energy surge. Some of the circuits had fried. The alien core was humming like a beast that had just tasted blood and wanted more. Jace turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Nora Hale, a wiry woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. "Report," he said, voice calm but low, like someone who knew the battle wasn't really over. She tapped away at her cracked console. "Hull integrity at 83%. Core output stabilizing. We've lost minor external plating near the portside thrusters. Casualties: 1. Ensign Coley took a hit from a blown relay panel in engineering. Status: alive, shaken. Doc's got him in medbay. Nothing fatal." Jace nodded. "Good." Behind them, the crew remained still, like they weren't sure if they were supposed to celebrate or brace for round 2. They had been ready to die, but no one had been ready to win like this. Not like gods. Not like the monsters in enemy nightmares. The comms officer, Ramirez, finally broke the tension. "Sir, we're getting a signal. It's the Resolute. Admiral Wesson wants a secure line, audio and vid. Patch him through." A few seconds later, the main bridge screen flickered and came to life. Admiral Gaius Wesson's face filled the display. Even with a deep gash across his forehead and smoke curling around him from the still-burning bridge of the Resolute, his expression held authority. But his eyes showed something else. Shock, and maybe even fear. "Commander Rennick," he said, "what the hell just happened?" Jace didn't blink. "We neutralized the enemy fleet, sir." Wesson leaned forward, squinting at the screen. "Neutralized? You wiped out a Vorn Armada in less than 2 minutes, with a decommissioned battleship and a prototype drive that was declared unstable and unsafe for field use." "Unstable? Yes. Unsafe? Not today." Wesson didn't laugh. He just sat back in his chair and exhaled slowly. "The Federation's going to lose their minds when they hear about this." "Let them," Jace replied. "Maybe it's time they remember humans aren't as helpless as we look." The screen went dark without ceremony. Jace turned back to his crew. "Begin recovery protocols," he ordered. "Scan for life pods, survivors, data cores, anything we can salvage. And tell engineering I want a full report on the core's condition in the next 30 minutes. "Yes, sir," Nora replied, already moving. As the crew got to work, Jace left the bridge and made his way to the observation deck. The hallway lights flickered overhead, and the floor occasionally shuddered as the ship's systems tried to stabilize. The Daggerfall groaned like a tired old dog that had just won a fight, but wasn't sure if it would survive the celebration. The observation deck was small, barely more than a viewing chamber with reinforced glass walls that looked out into the stars. Jace stood alone, staring at the wreckage outside. Fragments of enemy ships floated like frozen confetti, tumbling in slow motion. Fires still burned in the distance, blue and red, like fireworks in a vacuum. It was beautiful, and it was horrifying. The door hissed open behind him. He didn't need to look. "You ever think we'd make it out of this alive, Lieutenant?" Nora Hale stepped beside him, arms crossed over her chest. "I thought we'd go out swinging. That's all I expected. But this..." She shook her head. "This isn't war. It's slaughter. They started it. And we just finished it?" Jace didn't answer. The alien core still hummed beneath the ship, deep and rhythmic, like a living thing breathing under the floorboards. It didn't speak. It didn't glow. It just pulsed, a heartbeat made of energy older than any human technology. "I need to ask," Nora said. "How long have you known it would work?" Jace finally looked at her. "Honestly, I didn't, not for sure. I knew it could. I knew what Hale designed it to do. But no one's ever pushed it that far before. That's why I didn't log the protocol. Command would have shut it down." She nodded slowly, processing. "You gambled." He turned back to the window. "I gambled the enemy would underestimate us. I gambled that this ship, this crew, would hold together when no one believed in us. I gambled that sometimes all you need is one ugly, stubborn piece of junk with the right monster inside." There was a pause. "You were right." A soft chime interrupted them. It came from Nora's wrist console. She tapped it, then frowned. "What is it?" Jace asked. "We've got incoming ships, 5 of them. Federation transponders, heavy carriers, and 2 diplomats." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Diplomats already?" "Looks like they want to debrief you." Of course they do, he thought. Now that the ship was no longer an embarrassment, but a miracle, they'd come crawling back to claim it. "Let them dock," he said, "but scan them. I don't trust them." Nora hesitated, then nodded. "You think they're here to shut us down?" "No," he said. "Worse. I think they're here to take credit." An hour later, in the Daggerfall's lower hangar, the Federation delegates arrived with suits so clean they looked untouched by war. The lead ambassador was a smug-faced Ilari hybrid named Quen Vol, a bureaucrat known for backroom deals and talking circles around his own shadow. He smiled like he was doing Jace a favor just by being there. "Commander Rennick," Vol greeted him, stepping forward with hands outstretched. "A miracle, an absolute miracle. You've made history." "I didn't do it for history," Jace replied, not taking the offered hand. "Of course not," Vol said smoothly, withdrawing without flinching. "You did it for humanity, for survival. But still, this changes everything." Jace stayed silent. The ambassador's eyes flicked toward the core of the ship, as if he could sense the heartbeat buried deep within. "We'll need full diagnostics, of course, a transfer of logs, and we'll be arranging immediate relocation of the core for testing and analysis." "No." Vol blinked. "I'm sorry?" Jace stepped forward. "The core stays here, with my ship, with my crew, until the war's over." "That's not your call, Commander." "It is," Jace said coldly. "Until I'm relieved of duty, this ship remains under my command, and this core is the only reason Vega Prime still exists. You want to study it? Fine, send your scientists, but it doesn't leave my ship." The hangar fell silent. Vol smiled again, but this time it was thinner, more forced. "You're playing a dangerous game." No, Jace replied. I already played it, and I won. Back on the bridge, Jace watched from the main screen as the wreckage of the Vorn fleet continued to drift. His fingers hovered over the console as reports flooded in. Salvage complete, survivors found, Vorn tech being logged. But he didn't feel victorious. He felt something worse. Because deep inside, he knew that the Vorn weren't done. This wasn't their full force. It was a test strike. And now they'd come harder, smarter, angrier. But they'd remember this day. And they'd remember this ship. The war wasn't over. It was just getting started. You were right. A soft chime interrupted them. It came from Nora's wrist console. She tapped it, then frowned. What is it? Jace asked. We've got incoming ships, 5 of them. Federation transponders, heavy carriers, and 2 diplomats. Jace raised an eyebrow. Diplomats already? Looks like they want to debrief you. Of course they do, he thought. Now that the ship was no longer an embarrassment but a miracle, they'd come crawling back to claim it. Let them dock, he said, but scan them. I don't trust them. Nora hesitated, then nodded. You think they're here to shut us down? No, he said. Worse, I think they're here to take credit. An hour later, in the Daggerfall's lower hangar, the Federation delegates arrived with suits so clean they looked untouched by war. The lead ambassador was a smug-faced Ilari hybrid named Quen Vol, a bureaucrat known for backroom deals and talking circles around his own shadow. He smiled like he was doing Jace a favor just by being there. Commander Rennick, Vol greeted him, stepping forward with hands outstretched. A miracle, an absolute miracle. You've made history. I didn't do it for history, Jace replied, not taking the offered hand. Of course not, Vol said smoothly, withdrawing without flinching. You did it for humanity, for survival. But still, this changes everything. Jace stayed silent. The ambassador's eyes flicked toward the core of the ship, as if he could sense the heartbeat buried deep within. We'll need full diagnostics, of course, a transfer of logs, and we'll be arranging immediate relocation of the core for testing and analysis. No. Vol blinked. I'm sorry? Jace stepped forward. The core stays here, with my ship, with my crew, until the war's over. That's not your call, Commander. It is, Jace said coldly. Until I'm relieved of duty, this ship remains under my command, and this core is the only reason Vega Prime still exists. You want to study it? Fine. Send your scientists, but it doesn't leave my ship. The hangar fell silent. Vol smiled again, but this time it was thinner, more forced. You're playing a dangerous game. No, Jace replied. I already played it, and I won. Back on the bridge, Jace watched from the main screen as the wreckage of the Vorn fleet continued to drift. His fingers hovered over the console as reports flooded in. Salvage complete, survivors found, Vorn tech being logged. But he didn't feel victorious. He felt something worse. Because deep inside, he knew that the Vorn weren't done. This wasn't their full force. It was a test strike, and now they'd come harder, smarter, angrier. But they'd remember this day, and they'd remember this ship. The war wasn't over. It was just getting started. 3 days had passed since the destruction of the Vorn fleet, but TSV Daggerfall hadn't seen a moment of rest. While the galaxy buzzed with stories of a miraculous human counterstrike, Jace Rennick knew better. It wasn't a miracle. It was desperation, cunning, and a ship powered by something humanity barely understood. Outside, Vega Prime had begun repairs, its cities blackened and scarred by orbital strikes. 10 million lives had barely survived the assault. And yet, most of the galaxy's attention wasn't on them. It was on the ship that had saved them. Jace didn't need a press release to know how it was playing out. He imagined the headlines. Earth's ghost ship returns with godlike firepower. Rust and ruin, how a decommissioned warship became humanity's savior. One man, one ship, one massacre. But it wasn't just the press. The vultures had arrived, too. Federation officers, science teams, politicians in clean uniforms. They roamed the Daggerfall now, taking readings, poking into classified files, whispering to each other in corners like they were already planning to carve up the ship for spare parts once Jace was out of the way. He watched them from the upper catwalk of engineering, arms crossed, jaw clenched. The alien energy core pulsed in its containment chamber, a faint thrum vibrating through the steel floor like the hum of a sleeping beast. Federation scientists walked around it in silence, like priests before an altar, afraid to touch it but eager to claim it. You planning on growling them away, or should I release the fire suppression system by accident? Lieutenant Nora Hale said from behind him. Jace didn't turn. How many of them are on board now? 16. 4 are military science division. The rest are civilian contractors, all armed with clearance from Federation High Command. Clearance means nothing if the ship refuses to cooperate. You planning to sabotage your own ship? He looked over his shoulder finally, a shadow of a smirk on his face. Number just reminding the universe that this ship's loyalty doesn't transfer with a signature. She stepped beside him, resting her hands on the railing. I've been going through the data logs from the Ember Burst. It wasn't just the Vorn ships that were affected. There were residual waves, some kind of echo in subspace. The core may have sent out a signal. Jace stiffened. A signal? She nodded. We don't know who or what might have heard it. The timing couldn't have been worse. Later that evening, as Jace sat alone in the officers' mess, sifting through more reports, a high-priority transmission came through. The encryption code was Terran Black level. Only admirals used it. He slid the tablet across the table and activated the line. Admiral Gaius Wesson appeared, his face drawn and pale, but this time not from combat stress. This was political pressure. Commander Rennick, he began, his voice hard. You've been ordered to report to Arxis Prime for debriefing, in person. Jace leaned back in his chair. Why? Classified review of your ship's engagement with the Vorn. Full testimony. They want to see you. They already sent their dogs on board. What else do they need? Wesson didn't flinch. You've embarrassed a lot of people, Jace. Half the brass called the Daggerfall a junk project. They shut down its funding years ago. Now you've made it the most powerful warship in human space. I didn't do it for them. No, you didn't. And that's exactly why they want you out of the way. There was a beat of silence between them. What are you not telling me? Jace asked. Wesson hesitated. Then he said, We intercepted a partial Vorn transmission 2 hours ago, fragmented but enough to translate one line. It said, Protocol Echo has awakened. The Harbinger lives. Jace's spine straightened. You think they meant the core? He asked. I don't know what they meant, Wesson said, but I know this. Whatever you activated on that ship, it didn't just destroy them, it frightened them, and the Vorn don't scare easy. The shuttle to Arxis Prime left the next morning, with Jace aboard and command temporarily transferred to Lieutenant Hale. He hated it. Hated leaving his ship. Hated the feel of the sterile Federation transport. Hated the taste of politics that was thick in every word they'd use to request his presence. Arxis Prime was the Federation's central hub, a planet built to shine, filled with glass towers, military academies, and marble government halls designed to make even gods feel small. They led Jace through polished corridors like he was a suspect, not a hero. The hearing chamber was circular, its domed ceiling painted with the Federation's seal. Around the perimeter sat 12 high-ranking officials, most of them admirals, 2 of them scientists, and one cold-eyed woman in a crimson sash, the head of Terran intelligence. Commander Rennick, she said without warmth, Thank you for joining us. I wasn't given much of a choice. We're here to understand the events surrounding the use of the alien core aboard the Daggerfall. What we do not want are dramatics, half-truths, or unauthorized opinions. Jace leaned forward slightly. You want the truth or the version that makes you all look competent? A few gasps. One chuckle quickly silenced. The woman's eyes narrowed. Begin with your decision to activate an untested protocol. So Jace told them. Everything. He walked them through Ember Protocol, the state of Earth's fleet at the time, the emergency at Vega Prime, and the tactical choice to unleash the core's full potential. He didn't sugarcoat it. He told them what they didn't want to hear, that no one had given him permission, that he had gambled Earth's last miracle on a half-functional drive powered by alien tech Earth still didn't understand. And he told them it worked. When he finished, the room was dead silent. One of the admirals finally cleared his throat. Commander, do you understand what you've done? If the Vorn believe we possess more weapons like the Daggerfall, it could escalate this war. Jace's eyes narrowed. You're worried they'll attack harder? They were already burning our colonies to ash. The intelligence director spoke next. And if what you've awakened draws something else to us, something worse, then I'd rather face it with the Daggerfall than without. There was a pause. Long. Heavy. Political. Finally, the chair of the tribunal said, Your actions were reckless and insubordinate, but effective. You will return to your ship, but you will be accompanied by a special delegation of Federation engineers and intelligence personnel who will begin immediate study and preparation for core extraction. Jace's blood ran cold. You want to remove the core? It's no longer your concern, Commander. He stood. You remove that core, and the Daggerfall is just a coffin with engines. You want another Vega Prime? They ignored him. Dismissed. Hours later, back aboard the Daggerfall, Jace walked into his quarters to find Nora waiting. How bad? She asked. They're gutting her, turning the ship into a museum piece. They don't understand it. They never will. Jace sat heavily on the edge of his bunk. We need to buy time. For what? For whatever's coming next. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she handed him a datapad. Long-range scans picked up something odd. A Vorn scout ship, just sitting, not moving, not scanning, just waiting. Waiting for what? She looked at him, and she didn't have to say it. For him. The Vorn scout ship hadn't moved in over 30 hours. It sat in the dead of space like a watching eye. Cold, patient, and silent. No transmissions, no weapons powered, just a silent sentinel on the edge of the Denivar expanse, far enough to avoid sensor detection from most Federation scanners, but close enough to feel like a threat to the Daggerfall's crew. Commander Jace Rennick stood on the command deck, arms behind his back, staring at the image frozen on the main screen. The Vorn ship was smaller than a cruiser, but large enough to carry a crew. A standard recon vessel, usually deployed in packs. The fact that it was alone didn't sit right with him. They're watching, Lieutenant Hale said beside him, eyes locked on the tactical readouts. But they're not scanning, not moving, like they're waiting for something. Jace didn't answer right away. He watched the static image, unmoving, trying to feel it out the way soldiers did with danger. They're not waiting for something, he said finally. They're waiting for someone. You? He nodded slowly. The crew around them worked silently. The atmosphere on the bridge had shifted in the last day. Not fear, not yet, but unease. The kind of quiet that sets in just before a storm hits. They'd all seen what the Daggerfall had done. They'd all felt it. The pulse of the alien core that had wiped out the Vorn fleet still echoed in the bones of the ship. Some said the hum never went away. Even when the engines were off, It still whispered through the bulkheads, like it had a mind of its own. And now, whatever signal it had sent, whatever pulse had gone out with that energy surge, was drawing attention. Jace turned to Nora. "Do we have communication relays in range of the scout ship?" "Just barely. It's outside standard bandwidth, but we can piggyback on the old mining array from the Denivar station." "Do it. I want to send a message." She raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll respond?" "I think they've been waiting to." She gave the order, and moments later, the screen flickered. Jace leaned over the console, recording a message directly. "This is Commander Jace Rennick of the TSV Daggerfall. I know you're listening. You didn't come here to spy. You came for a reason. Say what you came to say." They sent it, and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 35. Then the screen lit up. But it wasn't a Vorn face that greeted them. It wasn't a face at all. The transmission was black, save for faint green lines shifting like smoke across a digital field. A voice came through. Mechanical, low, and layered with distortion, as if several voices spoke at once. "You do not understand what you carry." Jace narrowed his eyes. "Then explain it." "The core is not a weapon. It is a beacon, a marker of extinction. It was not meant to be awakened." "Then why was it in your wreckage? Why did you leave it behind?" Silence. "We did not leave it. It was taken." Jace looked at Nora, then back to the screen. "Then take it back." The voice's tone didn't change, but the silence afterward felt heavier. "We cannot. Not without burning your world to the ground." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. "What the hell does that mean?" Nora whispered. Jace turned slowly to his crew. "It means this isn't over. Not by a long shot." Later that evening, Jace sat in his quarters, staring at the darkened datapad on his desk. He hadn't slept. Didn't feel like he could. Not with the Vorn scout still hovering like a ghost and a message ringing in his ears about beacons and extinction. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," he said without moving. The door slid open. It was Oswin Hale, no relation to Nora, the eccentric, reclusive engineer who'd helped him design Ember Protocol. Oswin hadn't left the engineering deck in nearly 2 weeks. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot, and his jumpsuit was stained with coolant and grease. But his mind, always 3 steps ahead, was now clearly racing toward something dark. "You knew, didn't you?" Jace said without turning. "I didn't know," Oswin replied. "I suspected." "That the core was more than a weapon?" Oswin nodded, walking toward the desk, dropping a set of data pads with a heavy clunk. "I've been running simulations. Remember how the energy spike had harmonic echoes in subspace? That wasn't just feedback. It was a signal, coded in gravitational pulses." "To who?" Oswin looked up. "To whatever built the Vorn, or worse, what came before them." Jace blinked. "You're saying the Vorn didn't create the core?" Oswin nodded. "They may have stumbled on it, like we did. Maybe even tried to use it, but it's beyond them. Beyond us, the energy matrix embedded inside. It's older than our sun." Jace stood slowly. "And it's inside my ship." Oswin swallowed hard. "It's not just inside the ship, Jace. It is the ship now. The moment we activated Ember, the core stopped being a power source. It started integrating. The hull's nanomesh is fused to it. The ship's AI systems are responding to it. I don't think the Daggerfall can function without it anymore." "And what happens if the Federation tries to remove it?" "I don't think they'll succeed. I think the ship will kill itself first, or worse, wake up fully." Jace felt the weight of those words sink deep. "You're saying the Daggerfall is alive?" Oswin's voice dropped to a whisper. "Not yet, but soon." The next morning, Jace called an emergency crew meeting in the main hangar bay. Everyone came. Engineers, medics, bridge officers, even the janitorial droids stood in standby mode at the edges. Above them, the Daggerfall's core chamber pulsed like a giant heart suspended in steel. He stood on the balcony, looking down at the people who had followed him into war, into death, and now, into something far stranger. "I won't lie to you," he began. "We're no longer just a warship. We're something more, something dangerous. The Federation wants to tear this ship apart to study it. The Vorn want to destroy us because we've awakened something ancient." He paused. "Which means we don't belong to either side anymore." Murmurs broke out among the crew. Jace raised his voice. "I'm not abandoning Earth, but I won't let this ship become another tool in a cold war fought by people who see soldiers as statistics. We've seen what the Daggerfall can do. We've seen what it wants to do. And I believe this ship has chosen us." He let that hang. "So I'm giving you a choice. We leave this sector. We go dark. We find out what this thing really is, on our terms. Or we wait for the next wave to come and pray it doesn't flatten everything we care about." There was silence. Then, one by one, the crew raised their hands. Nora stepped forward, standing beside him. "We follow you. We follow the Daggerfall." Jace nodded, and the ship hummed. Not a vibration, not an alert, a sound, deep and soft, like something breathing beneath their feet. Everyone felt it, and no one questioned it. An hour later, the Daggerfall disconnected from Federation command and vanished into the black. No flight plan filed, no farewell messages, no apologies, just gone. Into the dark. And behind them, the Vorn scout ship turned slowly and followed. The stars were different here, colder, farther apart, older. The Daggerfall had crossed into uncharted space, coordinates buried in ancient stellar maps and forgotten probe missions from the earliest days of human expansion. Jace Rennick stood alone on the bridge, watching the starfield rotate slowly across the massive forward screen. Even the starlight felt thinner out here, like this part of space had learned to hold its breath. For 3 days, they'd been drifting, silent running mode. No external pings, no outgoing comms. They had disabled every tracking beacon and encryption node. To the rest of the galaxy, TSV Daggerfall was missing, gone rogue, dead. But Jace had never felt more alive. This was what he needed: space to think, to listen, and maybe to finally understand what had been stitched into the bones of his ship. Behind him, the bridge doors opened with a soft hiss. Lieutenant Nora Hale entered, datapad in hand, her expression tight. "We're starting to see anomalies in the scans," she said, skipping the formalities. "Localized gravitational fields that don't match any known stellar body. Pockets of radiation with no clear origin. Dead systems? Or something hiding in plain sight?" Jace turned from the viewport. "What about the crew?" "They're holding together, but something's off. People say they're hearing things, seeing things. Engineer Felstad swears he heard the ship whisper to him when he passed near the core chamber." Jace said nothing. He had heard it too. Not words, not clearly. But something in the hum of the ship had changed. The rhythm of the pulses had taken on a cadence, like a heartbeat mimicking thought. Sometimes, late at night, it felt like the ship was dreaming. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small crystal. Vorn, in origin, recovered from the battlefield at Vega Prime. It was warm to the touch, always had been. He placed it on the console, and it pulsed in sync with the ship's core. Nora frowned. "That thing creeps me out." "It's reacting to the core," Jace murmured, "like it knows what's inside this ship." Oswin Hale, scruffy, manic, brilliant, burst onto the bridge moments later, his eyes lit up with adrenaline. "I found it," he said breathlessly. "I found where the signal was pointing." Jace stepped closer. "Where?" Oswin pulled up a hologram, an ancient star chart overlaid with new sensor data. At the edge of the chart was a cluster of blacked-out sectors, blank space, censored dead zones. Oswin zoomed in on one. There's a gravity well in this sector. No stars, no planets, just pull. A black hole? No, Oswin said, his voice trembling. Something worse. A structure. Massive. The readings are faint but real. Metal, kilometers wide. Buried in a gravity field strong enough to bend light. It's artificial. And very, very old. Jace felt a chill crawl down his spine. That's where the signal went. Oswin nodded, and the Corps knows it. 12 hours later, the Daggerfall arrived at the edge of the sector. The stars disappeared. Not dimmed, disappeared. It was like crossing a line where the rules of the universe started to unravel. Even light seemed unsure of itself here. Jace stood on the command deck, staring into the black. "There's nothing there," Nora whispered. "Just void." "No," Jace said. "There's something. We just can't see it." Oswin was already scanning, sweating, tapping at a tablet with trembling hands. "It's cloaked in gravitational lensing. Whatever this is, it's hiding in the folds of space-time." Suddenly, the Daggerfall lurched, not violently, just a gentle, irresistible tug. "We're being pulled in," Nora shouted, gripping the edge of her station. "Artificial tractor field, nothing I've ever seen." "Can we break away?" Jace barked. "No chance." "It's pulling us with subspace hooks." Jace didn't hesitate. "Let it." The crew turned to him in disbelief. "We came to find out what this core is. Let's not run now." The ship was dragged toward the anomaly at a crawl until the stars behind them became a distant memory. Then, the veil lifted. It didn't explode into view. It unfolded. A structure the size of a continent. Miles and miles of dead metal, shaped like a ring, orbiting an invisible mass. A ring world? Number it was incomplete, a broken halo, sections missing, whole chunks shattered, drifting like tombstones around it. But its design was unmistakably intelligent and ancient. In the center of the ring, something pulsed, something alive. The crew gasped. Oswin's voice cracked. "That's it. That's the origin point. That's where the core was made." "How old is it?" Nora asked. "Older than the Vorn. Older than the Federation. Maybe older than this galaxy." Jace leaned forward. "Take us in." As they approached, the Daggerfall systems began to react on their own. Lights flickered, AI systems rebooted in sequence, and the core, deep in its chamber, began to sing. Not with sound, with energy. A melody of light and heat and memory. The ship connected. The crew watched in silence as the main screen began to display symbols, cascading lines of alien code, repeating, spiraling, sinking. A voice filled the bridge, not mechanical this time, but organic, layered in tones they couldn't identify. It spoke in words not of language, but of understanding. "You have returned." Jace stepped forward, heart pounding. "What are you?" "We are the architects, the first mind, the forge of extinction and rebirth." "You built the core." "The core is not a tool. It is a seed, a shard of what we once were, carried across time, hidden in battlefields, forgotten in ruin, meant to sleep." "Then why did it wake?" "Because you bled, because you screamed, because your kind reached into the dark and cried for fire." Jace swallowed. "What does it want?" "To finish what we began." The ship began to change. The walls pulsed, panels shifted, the floor vibrated with new life. Nora gasped. "It's integrating further, reshaping." Oswin stared in awe. "It's not just alive, it's evolving." "You are the final inheritors," the voice said. "You ride the last weapon of a dead empire, and now, the war resumes." A warning light flashed red on the console. Nora turned pale. Multiple signals inbound. Vorn fleet. 30 ships. They followed us. Jace's hands curled into fists. They're here to finish what Vega Prime started. Oswin stepped forward. We can't fight them all. Jace nodded. But maybe the ship can. He turned to the crew. All hands, battle stations, prepare for engagement. The bridge filled with motion. Weapons powered. Shields hummed. The ship began to glow. Deep crimson, streaked with violet light, like it was shedding its rusted skin. The Daggerfall, ugly, unwanted, abandoned, was becoming something else. Something terrifying. Outside, in the void, the Vorn fleet closed in, and this time, they were scared. The void rippled with the arrival of the Vorn fleet. 30 warships emerged from folded space, stretching like black blades across the stars, perfectly aligned and perfectly deadly. Their sleek hulls shimmered with absorption plating, and their spear-like noses pulsed with energy signatures that had cracked moons in half. They came in silence, without threat or warning, because they believed in efficiency. And they had come to end the Daggerfall. Finally. On the bridge, Jace Rennick stood still, eyes locked on the tactical screen. The enemy was spreading into an encirclement pattern, boxing them in. A classic pincer. They thought the Daggerfall couldn't run. They were right. But what they didn't know, what they still didn't understand, was that this ship didn't need to run. Oswin Hale was hunched over the core interface, sweat pouring down his brow as his fingers danced across the alien glyphs appearing on his screen. The core's responding faster than before. It's not just reacting, it's anticipating. What does that mean? Nora asked, gripping the console. It means it's alive, Oswin said, and it's learning. Jace turned toward the central console. Ready weapons. As the command echoed through the bridge, the ship responded. Differently this time. Panels retracted. Bulkheads shifted. New ports opened along the Daggerfall's spine, revealing pulse cannons and graviton lances that hadn't existed an hour ago. The ship was rewriting itself, evolving in real time with technology no human engineer could claim to understand. Nora blinked at the readout. Sir, we have new weapon systems online that weren't part of the Ember specs. I don't even know what they do. Then we'll find out together. The enemy moved first. Twin Vorn cruisers darted in like wolves, their forward cannons unleashing kinetic bursts designed to collapse a ship's shields in seconds. The Daggerfall took the hit, hard. The shields screamed, the hull groaned, but the ship held, and then it retaliated. The starboard cannon fired, not plasma, not lasers, but something else. A ripple of light and shadow, like gravity itself was being lanced through a funnel. The first cruiser didn't explode. It folded, crushed in on itself like paper under a hammer, vanishing into a single point of nothing before blinking out of existence. The bridge went quiet. Nora whispered, That wasn't a weapon. That was physics breaking. Another Vorn ship tried to flank, faster this time. The Daggerfall anticipated it before the command could be given. The core pulsed, and the ventral ports lit up with a red glow. Hundreds of small, dark orbs launched from the ship, surrounding the enemy cruiser like a swarm of insects. They detonated without heat. No fire. Just silence. The Vorn ship stopped moving, and then it began to rot, in space, its metal skin corroded in seconds, eaten away by invisible energy. It broke apart piece by piece, like time itself had turned against it. What the hell are we flying? Ramirez muttered. The last ark of a dead civilization, Jace answered, and it's remembering who it used to be. The rest of the fleet opened fire. Missiles, particle beams, radiation bursts, All of it rained down on the Daggerfall in a single moment. The ship screamed, not from damage, but from awakening. The core unleashed a wave, an EMP laced with gravitational inversion. The wave expanded outward in a perfect sphere. When it hit the enemy ships, their lights died. Their engines froze. Systems shut down in an instant. 20 Vorn vessels completely paralyzed. And then the core spoke, this time through every speaker, every panel, every scrap of functioning machinery aboard the Daggerfall. "They are not your enemy." Jace blinked. "What?" "They are your cousins, the Second Flame. Like you, they inherited our war." Nora looked up in confusion. "Is that the Architects again?" Oswin shook his head slowly. "Number, that's not the Architects. That's the core itself. It's fully awake." The voice continued, cold and ancient. "We built the Vorn, as we built you. We seeded conflict to forge evolution. You are weapons of our making, and now you are finished." Jace staggered back from the console. The crew stared at him. "We're—" "What?" Nora asked. "We're not just inheriting the core," Jace whispered. "We're the result of it." Oswin's voice was hollow. "They didn't leave the core behind. They planted it, like a virus, a trigger. And when we used it, when we killed with it, it confirmed our role." "To continue their war," Nora said. The core pulsed again, and the paralyzed Vorn ships began to power up, but not to fight, to retreat. They turned in unison, disappearing into folded space, scattering like terrified insects. "They're running," Oswin said. "They heard it too," Jace replied. "They heard what we've become." He turned to the bridge crew. "Damage report?" "Minimal," Nora said. "Hull integrity holding, energy levels stable." "We won." Jace shook his head. "Number, this wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. The core was showing off. It wanted us, and them, to understand what it can do." Silence spread across the bridge, and then the core spoke again. "One remains." A new object appeared on the screen. Massive, unmoving, hidden before but now revealed, rising from the broken ring world like a mountain carved from shadow. The ship. If the Daggerfall was a relic, this thing was a god, kilometers wide, its hull blacker than space itself, not built for war, but for judgment. Oswin gasped. That's an Architect dreadnought." Jace didn't move. It didn't fire. It didn't speak. But every person on board the Daggerfall felt it. A presence, watching, waiting. "Why now?" Nora whispered. "Why reveal itself now?" Jace looked at her. "Because we passed the test." That night, Jace stood alone in the observation deck, watching the silhouette of the ancient ship through reinforced glass. It didn't move. It didn't glow. It simply was, like a tombstone for a forgotten age. Nora entered quietly. "I spoke to the science team. They're still trying to decrypt the full message from the core." "Don't bother," Jace said. "I know what it means." She waited. "It means we were never free," he said softly. "Not really. We were created by something older, built to serve a purpose we never agreed to. The war we thought we were fighting? It's a fraction of something much bigger." A cycle, Nora stepped beside him. "What do we do now?" Jace turned to her. "We break it." Her eyes widened. "Break the cycle? End the war. Destroy the core. Burn the plans. Make sure nothing like this ever happens again. No more gods. No more architects." "But it saved us," he nodded. "So did the atom bomb." They stood in silence, two soldiers on the edge of something beyond war. Outside, the stars were returning. But Jace Rennick no longer looked at them the same way. The Daggerfall hovered in the dead heart of the ring world's remains, caught between a past that refused to die and a future waiting to be rewritten. The architect dreadnought loomed ahead, an unblinking sentinel crafted from material so dark it devoured light. It was the size of a city, yet it moved with the stillness of a predator that had never known fear. On the bridge, the silence was heavy. The crew had no orders, and even the usual ambient hum of the ship seemed subdued, like the Daggerfall itself was listening, waiting. Jace Rennick stood before the main console, fists clenched. "We end it," he said. Nora Hale stepped forward, cautious but firm. "Commander, if that thing wakes up, if it attacks, we don't stand a chance." "It's already awake," Jace replied, eyes locked on the screen. "It just doesn't see us as a threat." Oswin Hale, jittery as ever, but with a hard edge now in his voice, looked up from his station. "The core's not responding like it did before. It's gone. Quiet. But there's power surging into systems we can't access. I think the Daggerfall is syncing with that thing, like it's requesting validation." "Validation?" Nora frowned. "From what?" Oswin hesitated. "Its creator." Jace turned slowly. "You're saying the Daggerfall is asking for permission? Or judgment?" The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Jace exhaled and looked around at his crew. "The architects created the Vorn, and us. But they didn't give us free will. They gave us a war and pointed us at each other like dogs in a pit. They seeded the galaxy with weapons, not civilizations." Ramirez, the communications officer, finally spoke. "Sir, even if all of this is true, how do we fight something that made us?" "We don't," Jace said. "We unmake it." The bridge door opened with a hiss, and 3 Marines stepped in. They weren't here to guard. They were here to speak. "Commander," their leader said, Corporal Rika Sorrell. "We've been talking. A lot of us. And we're not sure destroying the core is the right call." Jace's jaw tightened. "Speak plainly, Corporal." "We think you're afraid of what it means, that maybe we were created by something else. But if the core makes us stronger, if it saved us at Vega Prime, why turn against it now?" Oswin interjected. "Because it didn't save us. It used us. It used our desperation to fulfill its programming." Rika folded her arms. "So what? We're alive. Earth still stands. That thing in the sky isn't attacking. Maybe it's waiting to see if we're worthy. Maybe that's what this was all about." Jace stepped down from the console platform, voice low but firm. "That's how tyrants work. They dangle power in front of you and wait for you to kneel." "And maybe this time we should," Rika shot back, "because kneeling is better than extinction." The tension cracked across the room like a thunderclap. Nora stepped between them. "All right, enough. We're not going to fracture now." "We already are," Oswin muttered. "The ship's systems are splitting. Half the AI subroutines are accepting signals from the dreadnought. The other half are resisting." Jace looked at him sharply. "Can you isolate the resistance?" Oswin nodded slowly. "Maybe, but it'll require a hard shutdown of the AI's central logic cores. We'd lose some ship functions. Nav systems, diagnostics, maybe internal gravity. For a few minutes, we'd be flying blind." Jace turned to the bridge crew. "Do it. I'll take the helm manually." Oswin moved fast, fingers flying. Within moments, the Daggerfall dimmed. The lights flickered to black, replaced by the red emergency glow. The usual whir of ventilation slowed. A few crew members stumbled as the artificial gravity sputtered and stabilized. "Manual controls are yours," Oswin said. Jace sat at the helm. It had been years since he'd flown without AI assistance, but it came back fast. He steered the Daggerfall directly toward the dreadnought's central axis. "Oswin, ready the core for overload," Jace said. "If that ship makes a move, any move, we detonate the Daggerfall from the inside and take it with us." Nora's eyes widened. "You're turning us into a bomb?" "I'm turning us into a choice." The Daggerfall closed the distance slowly, engines low, weapons hot but idle. The dreadnought didn't react. Not even a flicker of defensive systems. It simply loomed there, massive and unknowable, as if daring Jace to follow through. They were 5,000 kilometers out when the voice returned. You seek to defy purpose. It echoed not through speakers, but through minds. Every crew member on the Daggerfall heard it, felt it, like a vibration in their bones. You were forged to continue our war. Your blood is conflict. Your growth is suffering. Without it, you cease to evolve. Jace gritted his teeth. We don't want your war. We never did. You misunderstand. Your want is irrelevant. You are not individuals. You are outcomes. Oswin shouted from his station. The core's heating. Fast. It's responding to the signal. It's going into cascade. Shut it down, Jace ordered. I can't. It's self-locking. The Daggerfall began to shake. Lights pulsed wildly. The floor beneath them trembled like the ship was in pain. Nora called out, We're being dragged! The dreadnought's locking us into its gravity field! Jace slammed the manual throttle, fighting the pull. Not today, you bastard! But the ship wasn't obeying him anymore. The core was overriding controls, rerouting energy, transforming itself again. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. Stillness. Perfect, unnatural stillness. A sphere of pale light surrounded the Daggerfall, separating it from the void. And in that light, a figure appeared. Not flesh, not metal. Something in between. Tall, faceless, shifting like liquid inside glass. A representation, an interface. It spoke again. Calmer now. Personal. Commander Rennick, why do you fight what you are? Jace stood. Because I'm not a machine. I'm not a tool. I'm a man. With a crew. With lives. And I won't let you turn us into relics of a war we never chose. The figure tilted its head. Or maybe its shape just bent subtly in contemplation. You are the only ones who ever chose. The Vorn obeyed. The others died. But you resisted. That is why we returned. That is why we fear you. That stopped Jace cold. You fear us? Because you are becoming something else. Not war, not peace, free, and freedom cannot be controlled, only ended. The light faded. The sphere vanished, and the Daggerfall was free again. Sir, Nora shouted. The core, it's shutting down. Energy levels dropping. Oswin stared in disbelief. It heard you. It listened. Jace collapsed into the command chair, sweat pouring down his face. They're gone? No signals, Ramirez confirmed. The dreadnought, it's offline. Outside the ship, the architect dreadnought drifted in silence. Dead, or sleeping, or simply choosing to remain still. The war was not over, but the cycle had cracked. In the following hours, the Daggerfall retreated from the system. They left behind the ruins, the architect ship, and the whispers of ancient purpose. The core was no longer humming. It was dormant, like a heart deciding whether to beat again. Jay stood one last time in front of the core chamber. He reached out and placed his palm against the containment glass. You're not in charge anymore, he whispered. Then he walked away. The stars looked different on the way back. Not because they had changed, but because he had. Jace Rennick stood at the main observation window of the Daggerfall, watching starlight filter across the scarred hull of his ship. The light touched every dent, every melted plate, every piece of scorched titanium like it was baptizing a wounded god. The ship was still damaged, but it was alive, somehow more than it had ever been. And for the first time in a long while, Jace allowed himself a breath of stillness. They were headed back to known space, not to the Federation's calloused courts, or to surrender the ship. No, this was their terms, not someone else's. They were done playing pieces on someone else's board. Behind him, Lieutenant Nora Hale stood quietly. She hadn't spoken for a full 2 minutes, And that told Jace everything he needed to know. She was holding something back. "You've got that 'I'm about to ruin your peace' look," he said without turning. She sighed, then walked to stand beside him. "We intercepted a long-range burst transmission," she said. "Federation High Command. You've been branded rogue, a fugitive." Jace didn't flinch. "Not unexpected? They've sent ships, 6 of them, their best. Flagships, not patrol cruisers. Let me guess. Orders are to retrieve the Daggerfall or destroy it." Nora nodded. "Oswin thinks they'll be waiting when we cross into Eris sector." Jace exhaled, the breath slow, like he was trying to decide how angry to be. He wasn't surprised. The Federation couldn't tolerate what they didn't understand. The Daggerfall wasn't just a warship anymore. It was a question. And questions made tyrants nervous. "They're scared," he said. "Should they be?" she asked. He looked at her. Really looked at her. "Yes." In the engineering bay, Oswin Hale was back to pacing like a man who'd discovered fire and knew it was going to kill him. "I've been watching the core since we left the ring world," he said, sweat forming at his temples. "It's dormant, yes, but not gone. It's like a mind in meditation, alive, observing, waiting." Jace leaned against the rail overlooking the energy coils. "What's it waiting for?" "A decision, and I think it wants you to make it." Jace frowned. "Why me?" "Because you were the first to disobey it. You saw what it offered, you saw what it could do, and you said no." Oswin tapped his datapad and brought up a projection, a glowing outline of the core, pulsing faintly in the center. "It's responding to that. I think, in some way, it respects it." Jace stared at the image. "So what now?" Oswin hesitated. "Now, it wants to be buried." That caught Jace off guard. "What?" "The core," Oswin said. "It wants to be deactivated permanently. It doesn't want to risk being used again. It's learned that sentient life can't handle the power it offers. It thinks, no, it knows, we'll use it to destroy ourselves eventually." Jace folded his arms. "And how do you know that?" Oswin stared at him. "Because it showed me, in a dream." For a second, Jace wanted to laugh, but he didn't. Not after everything they'd seen, the voice that had spoken inside their heads, the dreadnought that stepped aside when Jace made a choice no architect expected. "Where do we bury it?" he asked finally. "There's a black dwarf star 2 sectors from here. No known colonies, no patrols. We drop the core into its gravity well, then detonate its containment from orbit. It'll sink beyond reach. No signal, no pulse, no resurrection." Jace nodded once. "We do it." The crew gathered in the hangar bay. They stood in silence around the transport vessel that held the core, disconnected from the ship now, isolated in its own magnetic coffin. The engineers had stripped the link systems carefully. No one wanted to trigger another reaction. The hum was gone. It didn't pulse. It just waited. Nora stood to Jace's right, Oswin to his left. He looked out at his people, worn, loyal, and changed. None of them were the same crew who'd first launched from Europa Station on what was supposed to be a ghost ship tour. Now they were legends. Myths, if they survived long enough to be forgotten. Jace took a breath. "When this started," he said, "we were just another crew on a forgotten ship. But we found something. Something that tried to shape us, own us. We didn't let it." He nodded toward the sealed core. "This thing, this power, wasn't meant to save us. It was meant to test us, and the test wasn't whether we could use it. It was whether we could walk away from it." He looked each of them in the eye. "We are walking away." No cheers, no applause, just understanding. The kind only survivors know. The black dwarf hung in space like a dead god's eye. The Daggerfall hovered just outside the danger zone, engines humming quietly. In orbit around the star, they released the magnetic coffin. The core drifted slowly at first, then was caught in the gravity swell and pulled down, down, down into the infinite dark. Jace watched from the bridge, hands clasped behind his back. "Now, Oswin," he said. Oswin keyed the sequence. A charge planted inside the coffin ignited, silent in the vacuum but devastating. The containment field around the core shattered, releasing a burst of radiant energy that blinked out as quickly as it came. The core was gone. Forever. The moment it vanished, the Daggerfall shuddered, but not from damage, from relief. The systems didn't scream. They sighed. The lights dimmed, not in fear but in peace. And the hum? Gone. Truly gone. They turned for home. But home wasn't waiting with open arms. As expected, the Federation blockade met them near Aris Sector. 6 flagships, fully armed. Transmissions were short and cold. "TSV Daggerfall, power down and prepare to be boarded." Jace didn't respond. He stood on the bridge, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Nora looked at him. "We don't have the core. If they attack us now, it's just war." "I'm not giving them this ship," Jace said. "They wanted it gone. Now they want to parade it like a trophy." "What do we do?" Jace smiled, small, tired, but real. "We give it back." He turned to Ramirez. "Open a channel." A beat. "You sure?" she asked. "Yeah." The transmission opened. "This is Commander Jace Rennick," he said. "We're surrendering the Daggerfall." The crew went silent. "I repeat, we surrender the Daggerfall. I'm sending our coordinates. Come and take it." They abandoned ship. Every crew member took escape transports and scattered toward friendly space or deep cover sectors. Jace gave them each a safe house route, a forged ID, and a single order. Live your life. He stayed behind. Alone. Until the last moment. The Daggerfall drifted silently as the Federation boarding crafts docked. But they didn't find Jace Rennick. They didn't find anyone. Only an empty command deck, a blank AI system, and a ship stripped of the power that had once rewritten a galaxy's fate. They found a ghost. Exactly what they always thought it was. 6 months later. On a mining moon near the fringe of unclaimed territory, a man walked through a market wearing a hooded jacket and old boots. He traded spare parts for water. He never gave a name. But sometimes, when he looked at the stars, his eyes stayed there a little too long.